Hey everybody, I'm Sam, aka I Sam Was, and today I'm going to help you set up your camera. I'm going to show you some settings and general rules of thumb for how to best calibrate your camera, your webcam, or even your mirrorless cameras to get the best picture you can for your streams and your recording. So sit back, relax, and hope you learned something today. Thank you. Okay, guys. So I personally have the Elgato Face Cam, the first generation. And this is the Elgato Camera Hub software that you get with your camera. Now, I know we all have different cameras, different webcams, different DSLRs or mirrorless cameras. So, a lot of these settings will generally be found in the software of those cameras as well, or inside your DSLR or mirrorless cameras. Right now, first and foremost, I'm going to kind of revert the camera software back to basically what it was when I first got the camera and set it up. Basically, plug it in. This is how it comes out. And as you can see, not great. Way overexposed. Way too much light coming in. Not good. What's really causing that is that you have your exposure and your white balance set to automatic. Always turn those off. You don't want the automatic setting on. It's never going to be very good. So you turn those off, and now you can see it looks a lot better. First and foremost, because of how my setup is, I don't have a lot of room here. So I zoom my FOV in 130 because I just want me and my background. I don't want, the rest of the wall or anything else. But you can obviously, that depends on your setup and how much room you have, what you want in your background. You can adjust the FOV however you want it to be. Next, we're going to talk about exposure settings. Exposure is really one of the most important settings when it comes to your cameras. It's basically how much light you're allowing to go into your camera. The different settings are ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Most webcams don't really have aperture settings. Those are more for your DSLR and your mirrorless cameras. Now we're going to talk about your ISO and your shutter speed. These are two of the most important settings when it comes to getting a quality image out of your camera. The shutter speed, you typically want to make it about two, maybe a little more than two times your frame rate of your recording or your stream. I stream at, and most of us stream at 60 FPS. So a good rule of thumb is to put it around 120. Sometimes you can go to 160. It'll make it a little darker. And this will also, the shutter speed also is how fluid the movements in your video are going to be. So the lower it is, you know, the more blur you're going to have on the movement. The higher you put it, the more fluid it's going to be. Okay, see, pretty easy to follow along with. But typically, you want to make it about two times your frame rate. And now we're going to talk about ISO. ISO is basically how sensitive your camera is to light, how much light it's going to be allowed into your camera. Now, for me, I think the best way to do this is to keep your ISO as low as possible and adjust your lights. Turn up the brightness on your lights because you're going to get the clearest image that way. If you turn up your ISO too much, you can start to get a little distortion in the edges and in the corners and a little bit of blurriness here and there and some pixelation. We don't want that. We want as clear as possible. So I like to keep mine at 100, which is the lowest it can get on Elgato Camera Hub, and I turn my brightness on my light. Now, I get we all have different lighting situations. We all have different setups. So if you have lower light than I do, if you have if your lights just don't go that bright, you can obviously turn up your ISO and adjust it to fit your needs. As you can see, when I turn up my ISO, it gets too bright. There's too much light. So we're going to turn mine back down to 100. This is basically where I like to keep my camera at. There are other settings here. You have your white balance. I turn automatic off because if I turn it on, I get kind of brown and sepia. I don't really like that. So I turn it off, and this is around 4100K to 3900K is where I like to keep it for the most accurate colors for me, for my camera and my lighting situation. Obviously, you can tinker with that. Your camera is could be different. You could have, a Brio. You could have your OBS bot cameras, or whatever. But you're gonna have to adjust some of these settings to fit your camera and your lighting situation. But the basic principles are there. Try and keep your ISO as low as possible. Keep your shutter speed approximately 2 times your frame rate, and try to get your white balance as close to natural as you can get it. I don't really use noise reduction. You can. I just feel like it blurs the image a little bit more than I like, so I turn that off. And I keep my sharpness around 2%. Sometimes I like to turn up the contrast a little bit. It makes it feel a little more cinematic. But for the most part, this is how I like to keep my setup in my camera. I hope you guys learned something today. There are so many different cameras out there, so many different lighting solutions you can use, but we can all get some good quality video out of our cameras. You just have to know what you're doing and learn how to properly calibrate your camera and your lighting situation. But thank you so much for watching, and I will try and bring you guys some more videos about maybe setting up your microphone and calibrating that and using filters, VSTs, and whatnot. Maybe I'll come back with some OBS tricks. But that's it for today. I appreciate you guys watching, and if you could hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys later. Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye.